At 10:13 p.m., my phone vibrated. Move the mortgage tomorrow. My father's message sounded more like a sentence than a request. Just 2 hours before, my mother had been beaming as she served dessert. Everyone received a piece, except my son. He didn't deserve it, she said. The table burst out laughing. He didn't. I helped him into his coat, and together we stepped out into the cold, not glancing back. That text wasn't a reminder. It was a challenge. And for the first time, I was prepared to fail it on purpose because they had no clue what I'd already survived. Thanksgiving in my family always looked flawless. Golden candles, crystal dishes, my mother's smile perfectly rehearsed for company. From the outside, the Caldwells seemed like the epitome of tradition. But every photo on those walls was carefully cropped, hiding the real story. I'm Sarah, the quiet one, the eldest. The one who learned early that love here always came with a price tag. My mother, Elaine, is a master of control disguised as charm. She hosts, she grins, she decides who's worthy of affection that day. My father, Victor, treats everything like a ledger. Trusts, mortgages, even feelings. He believes kindness should pay dividends. My younger sister, Chloe, never had to earn a thing. She's the favorite, always getting more before she even asks. And Jason, my older brother, learned to survive by keeping quiet, drifting between them and me as a buffer no one ever thanked. After my divorce, I started coming around less. I hoped that space might break the cycle, maybe make them miss us. It didn't. Victor offered to help with my mortgage, folding it into the family trust. Said it would simplify things. But I knew what that meant. He wanted my house, my freedom under his control. I declined politely. Since then, every dollar I earned felt like an act of rebellion to him. This Thanksgiving was supposed to be neutral territory. No fights, no strings. I told Noah, my 10-year-old, that we'd just eat, smile, and leave early. He was proud he'd helped make cranberry sauce, even wrote a card for Grandma. When we arrived, Elaine kissed my cheek like I was a guest. She set Noah's bowl behind her own store-bought dish, pretending not to see it. Dinner began as it always did. Laughter, inside jokes about people not present, subtle digs disguised as praise. Victor uncorked a bottle of wine, saying it was for those who could appreciate quality, then poured a glass for Chloe's 12-year-old daughter, as if she qualified. Noah wondered aloud why there were no mashed potatoes this year. Elaine smiled, sweet and sharp, and said some people didn't need more starch. Jason glanced at me, just once, as if he wanted to speak, but didn't. I squeezed Noah's shoulder, kept my tone calm. It's okay, I whispered. But it wasn't. That meal was already unraveling. The evening dragged on, heavy with forced laughter and clinking cutlery. My mother's dining room sparkled, silverware shining, napkins folded into perfect fans. Every detail staged for admiration. The only thing out of place was the quiet between me and my son. Noah sat across from the twins, Ava and Lily, who were busy showing Grandma the icing flowers on their cupcakes. Elaine laughed, her bracelets chiming like applause. Such well-mannered girls, she announced. I knew she was performing, reminding everyone who belonged and who didn't. Noah reached for the water pitcher, careful and gentle. Still, Elaine's eyes caught him. Sweetheart, she said, voice dripping with sugar. Let the adults handle that, okay? Her smile never touched her eyes. The twins giggled. Victor refilled his wine, pretending not to notice. Every few minutes, my mother found a new way to point out how I'd failed her script. A crooked napkin, a quiet child, a life too independent for her liking. It was always the same. But this time, something inside me refused to bend. When dessert arrived, Noah's face lit up. My mother's pumpkin cheesecake was his favorite. He'd spent the night before helping me make a smaller one at home, practicing for this moment. I watched as the tray made its way around the table. Chloe's daughters first, then Chloe, then Jason's youngest. Thick slices, generous, the way love should be. Finally, the tray returned to Elaine. She set it down, knife in hand, and looked at Noah. He didn't earn it after his behavior, she said, smooth as silk. The room went still. Noah blinked, confused. I'm sorry, Grandma. What did I do? She didn't answer, just reached for the whipped cream. adding more to Ava's plate. Jason shifted in his seat. His wife stared at her napkin. Chloe looked everywhere but at me. I felt heat rise in my chest, not anger but clarity. Years of swallowing small humiliations, pretending not to notice. The line between patience and surrender snapped. Noah whispered, "It's okay, Mom." His voice was small but steady. I smiled at him. "I know, sweetheart." I stood, the chair scraping against the polished floor. I grabbed his coat, knelt, and helped him into it. The room watched, silent. Elaine finally spoke. "You're really leaving?" I looked at her, not with anger, not even pain, just the calm before a storm. "We've already stayed too long." We left. The air outside was cold and sharp. For the first time in years, I could breathe. The drive home was quiet, except for the wiper scraping the windshield. Noah sat in the back, clutching his paper turkey from school, the one he'd wanted to show Grandma. Streetlights flickered by like old memories. When we pulled into the driveway, he asked softly, "Did I do something wrong?" I turned to him. "No, honey, you did everything right. Sometimes people are unkind because it makes them feel powerful." He nodded, but his eyes were distant, trying to understand a world that wasn't fair. Inside, I made him hot chocolate with extra marshmallows. He smiled a little, sipped, and went to bed without another word. When I tucked him in, he whispered, "It's okay, Mom. I don't need dessert." That hurt more than anything my parents had ever said. Downstairs, the house was quiet. The fridge hummed, the clock ticked. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the half-finished cheesecake we'd baked the night before. The one no one tasted. My phone buzzed on the counter. 10:13 p.m. A message from Dad. "Move the mortgage tomorrow." That was it. No please, no hope you got home safe. Just an order like I was his employee. I stared at the screen, my reflection faint in the glass. It was never just about money. It was always about control. Every loan, every favor, every reminder that I was the one in debt. I didn't answer. Instead, I opened my laptop. The glow lit up the kitchen as I scrolled through my payments and statements. Line by line, I traced every connection back to him. The trust, the joint investments, the property ties. Every chain disguised as help. Then I opened a blank document and started writing. Not a letter, not an explanation, a list. Every time they'd use generosity as leverage. Every time silence cost me dignity. Every time I told myself it wasn't worth the fight. By the time I finished, it was after midnight. The words felt heavy, final. I took one last bite of that cheesecake just to taste what my son had been denied. It wasn't sweet, it was fuel. Then I texted one person, "Jason, we need to talk." He replied almost instantly, "Tomorrow morning I'll come by." I closed my laptop. The house was still, the night crisp and clear. For the first time in years, I didn't feel small. Jason arrived the next morning, before I'd even finished my coffee. He looked uneasy, hands shoved in his jacket pockets, wearing that same half-apologetic look he always had when he came as the family's messenger. "Mom said you overreacted," he started. I laughed, not loudly, just the kind of laugh that comes when you're finally out of patience. "Overreacted? She humiliated your nephew over a piece of cheesecake." He sighed. "Yeah, I know. I saw it. I should have said something." I didn't reply. I just handed him my phone, the text from Dad glowing on the screen. "Move the mortgage tomorrow." Jason read it twice, his jaw tightening. He really sent this right after dinner? 10:13, I said. To the minute. He looked up. "What do you want me to do?" It was the first time he'd ever asked. Usually he tried to keep the peace, to keep his distance, but something had shifted. Maybe seeing Mom cut Noah out of dessert broke something in him, too. "I want out," I said. Completely. From the trust, the mortgage, everything tied to them. Jason nodded slowly, thinking. "It's possible. Complicated, but possible." He hesitated, then added, "There's something else you should know." He explained that while refinancing his house last year, he'd seen paperwork for the lake house, the second home our parents always called their retirement dream. 10 years ago, I'd co-signed part of the down payment before my divorce, just to help. They said my name would be temporary, just until their finances cleared, but no one ever removed it. So technically, Jason said, you're still part owner. I blinked. You're kidding. He shook his head. And they're about to lease it for the summer. 5 figures a month. They didn't tell you because they assumed you wouldn't notice. Something inside me shifted. All those years of being overlooked, minimized, treated like background noise, and now I had something they couldn't ignore. I don't want revenge, I said quietly. I just want them out of my life. Jason met my eyes. Then let's make it official. That afternoon, we met with the family's attorney, the same man who'd managed every Caldwell asset for decades. He greeted us politely, not realizing he was sitting in the eye of a storm. I told him I wanted to separate my share of the trust, to close every joint account linked to my father. Jason backed me up, calm and steady. The lawyer hesitated, clearly uncomfortable. Your parents might not, I cut him off. They don't get a say. He nodded, typing quietly. The sound of the keys was like a heartbeat. When we left, Jason turned to me. You know they'll come after you for this, right? I know, I said. But they'll find the door locked. 3 days later, it began. 6 missed calls from my mother, 3 from Dad, 1 voicemail. You're tearing this family apart, Sarah. That boy of yours needs to learn his place. If you keep pushing, you'll regret it. Her voice was calm. Too calm, like she was reading from a script she'd practiced her whole life. I forwarded it to Jason. He texted back 5 words, we're done for real now. The next morning, I got an email from the trust administrator. Subject, pending amendment request. I stared at it, heart steady, not racing. This was control slipping from their hands, and I knew it. But my parents weren't the type to give up quietly. January 7th, Jason's birthday. It had always been the only family gathering that felt even halfway real. No decorations, just pizza, kids running around, laughter that wasn't forced. So when my phone buzzed that morning with a tag notification, I didn't think much of it until I saw the post. A photo of the lake house, decked out with lights and banners. My mother's caption read, "Surprise party for our amazing son, the man who keeps our family together." She tagged everyone, Jason, his wife, his kids. Not me, not Noah. I called Jason right away. He picked up on the first ring, his voice tense. What is this? They didn't tell you? I asked. No, he said flatly. They just decided. We sat in silence for a moment. Then he said, we're going. When we arrived at the lake house, the driveway was packed. Cars lined the street. Music drifted from the patio, polished and low, like a soundtrack for their denial. Inside, relatives I hadn't seen in years held glasses of wine. My mother stood by the fireplace, glowing under soft lights. When she saw us, her face flickered, shock, then panic, then a smile that didn't fit. Jason, Sarah. What a surprise, she said, too brightly. Jason didn't waste time. Why did you post that party like I planned it? Her hand froze mid-gesture. It was supposed to be a nice surprise. No, he said. His voice cut through the room like glass. You used me to fix your image. People started whispering. My father stepped forward, jaw clenched. Lower your voice, son. Jason turned to the crowd. For everyone here, this wasn't my idea. It's just another show. And if you thought this was a real family celebration, you've been misled. Silence. Someone coughed. A cousin set down his drink. My mother's face turned red. We were trying to make peace. Peace doesn't start with lies, I said quietly. She looked at me like she didn't know me. You don't have to do this here. Yes, I do, Jason said. Because this is the only language you understand, an audience. The whispers grew. Someone pulled out a phone. My father's face twisted with anger. Jason took a breath. If you keep pretending, you'll end up celebrating alone. And with that, we turned and left. Behind us, the music stopped. The chatter faded. My mother called our names, her voice brittle and breaking. But we didn't look back. Outside, the air was cold, biting. Jason paused by the car, looking at me. You okay? Better than I've been in years. He smiled faintly. Then it's done. But it wasn't. Not yet. Not until they knew what it felt like to lose control for good. The next morning, there was a knock at my door, a delivery envelope. Inside, a typed letter from my father's accountant, warning about the serious tax consequences of splitting the trust. A note was stapled to it, "Don't make emotional decisions." I laughed. It was the same tone he'd used when I was 16 and wanted to pick my own college. I snapped a photo of the letter and sent it to Jason. 5 minutes later, he called. "Check your email." There it was, a scanned document, the finalized amendment, beneficiaries listed. Victor and Elaine Caldwell are hereby removed from future distributions. I stared at it, my heartbeat steady. Jason said, "They'll be at your door before sunset." He was right. At 4:17 p.m., a knock echoed through the house. Not frantic, measured. When I looked through the peephole, they stood on the sidewalk, not even close to the porch, like strangers unsure if they belonged. I opened the door but didn't step out. My mother smiled faintly. "Can we talk for a minute about what I asked?" "This isn't how family handles things," my father said. "Family doesn't go through lawyers." I met his eyes. "You're right. Family doesn't use mortgages as chains, either." Elaine stepped forward. "We just want to find a way back. We'll apologize to Noah." I waited, silent. She didn't add anything. "An apology isn't a transaction," I said. "You can't offer it like payment." My father's jaw tightened. "You think you're better than us now?" "No," I said. "I just finally see you clearly." I stepped back, hand on the door. "You're a lesson, not a legacy." Then I closed it. Their silhouettes lingered outside for a moment, then vanished into the dusk. That night, the house was quiet again. Noah slept, his breathing even. Jason texted, effective immediately. "They're out for good." I set my phone down, leaned against the wall, and let the silence settle. I didn't feel triumphant, just clean, like the noise had finally faded. 3 days passed before I heard from Jason again. A single text appeared while I was making breakfast for Noah. "It's official. Trust split confirmed." No exclamation marks, no celebration, just fact. I opened my email and saw the document there. My shares separated, my parents' names crossed out from future payments. It didn't feel like winning. It felt like finally exhaling after years of holding my breath. That afternoon, I picked Noah up from school. He ran to me, backpack bouncing, cheeks red from the cold. "Can we make cookies tonight?" he asked. "Of course," I said. We spent the evening in the kitchen. Flour dusted the counters. The scent of vanilla filled the air. Noah shaped stars and trees, laughing when one broke. I hadn't realized how long it had been since our home felt this light, this unguarded. When the first batch came out, he handed me one. "These are better than Grandma's," he said, half smiling. I almost corrected him, then stopped. He was right. They were. Later, after he went to bed, I sat on the porch with a cup of tea. The night was still, the air sharp enough to sting my lungs. Across the yard, the lights from Jason's house flickered through the trees. We'd had dinner there the night before, just us, his wife, the kids, and Noah. No speeches, no guilt, no judgment, just peace. During dinner, Jason had raised his glass to choosing peace. He said softly, even when it costs us blood. Everyone clinked glasses, even Noah with his orange juice. Now, as I sat under the quiet sky, I thought about everything my parents had tried to build, the control, the fear, the appearances. They lost all of it the moment I stopped playing along. My phone buzzed again. A missed call from Mom. No voicemail, just silence. Her favorite weapon, finally useless. I didn't call back. Instead, I looked through the window at Noah's drawings covering the fridge. Messy, bright, alive. The world she tried to shrink was growing again. Right here in this little house they once called too small. For the first time, dessert wasn't a reward to be earned. It was just dessert. I watched the porch light flicker against the snow. Tiny flakes spun like ash in the wind. Inside, Noah's laughter drifted from his room. Soft, safe, untouched by the people who once claimed to love us. I took a slow sip of tea and let the quiet fill the space where their voices used to echo. Maybe that's what freedom really is, not applause, not revenge, just the absence of their control. I thought about that night at 10:13 p.m., the text that tried to bind me again. They wanted obedience. What they got was silence no one could command. Boundaries don't break families. Control does. And if you've ever had to shield your child from your own relatives, you know exactly what I mean. Stay a while.